And I'm so grateful my parents are here. My girlfriend, who's been so wonderful. And also Beth Pickens, who's I feel like writers are like dogs that gobble their own poop, and you really like the dog, but you wish it would stop doing that. And it's hard to live with them, and I appreciate her patience. So I'm going to start out by reading from the Beautifully Worthless, and all you need to, it's a book-length poem, and there's some hybrid text in here, and I guess all you need to know is that the character, it starts off for this imagined town in Idaho called Camus, Idaho, and she gets to Camus and she realizes she's misread the map. There is no Camus. There's instead a town named Camus, and her dog is there, and the dog is Rorschach. This morning I started out for Camus, my last stab at finding a miracle town somewhere. It was so hot, Rorschach didn't have the energy to bend down and drink from her bowl. After an hour of driving, we came upon this huge hand-painted billboard that said cave in crude brown letters. I'd always wanted to go to a cave, so I followed a series of arrows down a gravel path until I saw a tiny wooden shack that said cave office. Leaving Rorschach in the truck, I went in. A young boy emerged from behind the desk with a book in his hand. At first I thought he was a girl because he had an androgynous Dutch boy haircut. "Hi," I said. "Hi." On the wall behind him was a sign that said, "Adults, $4. "Is the cave open?" I asked. "Yeah." "Can I bring my dog in?" "Yeah." The room felt like no one had been in it for years. He must sit here all day reading books, I thought. I got Rorschach out of the truck and went back inside the cave office. When I re-entered the room, the boy emerged exactly as he had just moments before, with his blonde-brown hair in his face and the book folded in half over his hand. He looked at me like I was someone different than the person who was just there 30 seconds ago. Weakly, he smiled. "Is the cave far from here?" I asked. He shook his head no and pointed toward the back of the office. The office was also a museum filled with dusty taxidermed animals, birds in glass cases, long bones and trays all around the floor, and cheap rings made out of railroad nails and a giant candy jar on the counter. I paid him the $4 and started toward the back of the museum where he'd signaled the cave was. Rorschach was choking herself, trying to lunge at the prehistoric bones and glass cases filled with stuffed hawks. I tugged at her leash, trying to keep her from knocking over a stuffed hawk. "You need a lantern," the cave boy shouted after me. My heart cemented shut inside me. Turning towards him, I said, "I need a lantern?" "Yeah." "Is it scary in the cave?" I asked. "Some people find it scary." "Are there animals down there? Will I need to wear something besides flip-flops?" "No," he said. "No, meaning there aren't animals, or no, I won't need different shoes?" I wanted to get the animal thing straight right now. "There aren't animals," he said. "If I'm not back in 15 minutes, come get me," I pleaded. "It takes longer than 15 minutes, he said. What had possessed me to come here? When I saw the cave billboard and enthusiastically sped down the gravel road, I imagined a freshly painted handrail, well-lit stalactites, and if not a tour guide, then at least other tourists. In spite of everything, I wound down the gravel path until the opening of the cave came into sight. I wished I had worn different shoes now. Pebbles were getting caught between the flip-flop bottom and my foot. Rorschach, eager to meet our respective deaths, tugged toward the cave. I was off-balanced with the lantern in one hand and a Dalmatian at full tilt in the other. The whole time, pebbles stabbed into the bottom of my feet. We entered the cave. Immediately, I wanted to cry, turn around, and beg the boy at the desk to come with me. There was enough light from the opening to see burned out light bulbs hanging in irregular distances along the path. After 3 steps, it would be pitch black. I continued to take steps toward the center of the cave. The lantern was a joke. The only thing it allowed me to see was an enormous shadow of my clenched jaw bobbing against the rock wall. The burned out light bulbs were adding up. Where were the ice sculptures and ponds of blue-green water? What if this whole cave thing was a facade to rob tourists? I'd be the famous statistic of the robbery victim who was killed for not carrying any money. My mother always told me to keep $20 in my sock in case I was robbed. I'd have something to give the robber. I could see the headline now, killed for 15 cents. The taxiderm birds and glass cases back at the museum flashed in my brain. I pictured my face on the stuffed hawk. I began to race down the trail, my flip-flops slapping the floor. Somehow the sentence being repeated inside me was, "You paid the $4, you can't turn around." Rorschach would protect me if someone jumped out. Giant shadows surrounded me, the occasional drip dripped. I came upon the first informative sign, a list of minerals the cave was made of. Holding the lantern up to the wall, I tried to see a mineral. A B movie I'd seen in the 7th grade called Tourist Trap flashed in my brain. It was about a man who kidnapped women and covered them in plaster, leaving only their nose open so they could breathe. Then before he'd cover their nostrils, he'd say, "Goodbye, baby." He was turning them into mannequins, but I can't remember why. I mean, besides the fact that he was crazy. We began to run, passing another burned-out light bulb and extension cord, more dripping. The shadows circled like sharks. I kept telling myself, I'm not cool enough to die this way. Another sign about volcanoes and how they relate to caves. Slap, slap, slap. Rorschach was busy smelling the blood droplets of similar past fools that were embedded in the floor. The 3rd sign talked about harmless bats with such and such wingspan. Bats. But the boy at the desk had promised no animals. Were bats a technical exception like reptile or bird family? I envisioned bumping into the bat nest and the bat swarming toward my face, Mama Bat in the background with her index finger pointed at me, shaking it back and forth and going tisk, tisk, tisk. Bats are good, the sign said. They eat insects. What's wrong with insects being in a cave? It wasn't a restaurant. There was no way I could deal with a bat flying into my face. With the last of my energy, I slapped my way to the final sign. You have reached the end of the trail. Go no further. You can now see why caves were great places for bears, slaves on the run, moonshiners, and murderers. It never occurred to me that I would have to go back the way I came, even though that's what distinguishes a cave from a tunnel. I looked for a lost decanter of moonshine. With the fear of bears, bats, rapists, and murderers on my trail, I started to the cave opening. In my brain was the villain's voice from Tourist Trap saying, "Goodbye, baby." Abruptly, Rorschach stopped. I covered my nose, waiting for some stubble-chinned man to jump out and slap plaster over my nostrils. Rorschach hunched over and began taking a dump. Baffled at my desire to respect a place that had caused me such suffering, I picked up after her when she was finished. Bag of shit and careening Dalmatian in one hand and lantern in the other, I raced down the trail until the light of the entrance became a larger and larger pinhole. A flock of winged silhouettes erupted out of the belly of light. Why me, I cried, dropping my head and making a final lunge toward outside, just long enough to see the sparrows I thought were bats fly out of the mouth of the cave and into the afternoon. Exhausted, I headed up the gravel path back to the cave office. I felt strangely close to the boy who made this experience possible for me. I wanted to ask him what people found attractive about being in the cave. Rorschach and I entered the back of the museum, and I choked up on the leash so she couldn't get too much of a lead. She wasn't budging, though. The cave office cat was glaring at her. I was not in the mood for cat-dog trivial bullshit, and I dragged her to the front. The boy emerged. Putting my lantern down, I said, "I've never felt so scared in my life." He smiled. He smiled a lot. The cat lunged at Rorschach and she cowered. I wanted to know this boy inside and out. He stood in front of me with his Dutch boy haircut and book in one hand. He looked busy. There was a population of 4 people in his town, and no one else was visiting this backyard cave. What could he have to do? He seemed restless to get back to his book. "Do you go in the cave every day?" I asked. "Yeah." What do you do? Read, I asked. Just mess around. I hope he doesn't jerk off down there, I thought. I simply wanted him to be the shy, intellectual paint boy, haircut, reading cave dweller whom I was going to run away with. His thumb tapped the spine of the book. I felt pressured to say the right thing, so he would rather talk to me than go back to his book. What was he reading? He looked about 15. He must live in the other wood shack next to the cave office with his family. I wonder where the family was. I didn't even want to go to Camas anymore. I wanted to stay with him, run through the desert at night, explore the cave with him as my guide, holding his sweaty pink hand in mine, take him away from his horrible family who kept him from everyone, just so he'd mind the cave. We'd go to Boise, slip into a gay bar. He'd point out the kinds of guys he liked to me. I'd teach him how to kiss. Like this, I'd say, moving my tongue over his like a basting brush over an uncooked loaf of bread. The roof came crashing in on my fantasy. I'm gay. He's 15. At the very least, a deduction. Rorschach lurched away from the cave office cat again. The opportunity for us to bond was slipping away. He hung out in the cave every day. He had to be totally cool or totally crazy. I tried to think of something to say that would make him want to go on a trip with me. There was this woman anthropologist or archaeologist or something who was writing a book. I don't remember where. I think Australia. Anyway, she went into a cave and lived there for over a year all by herself. She brought all her supplies in and lived without a watch, so she had no way to tell whether it was day or night. That whole time she never came out. When she finished her experiment and went back to her life, she killed herself because her reality was so fucked up. She'd lost all sense of time. He lifted his eyebrows, seeming momentarily interested, and said, "Really? Isn't that intense?" "Yeah." Rorschach whined. The cat was moving in on her. I was still holding the bag of shit from the cave. There was so much I wanted to talk to him about, but Rorschach was trying to squirm away from the cat. He'd seemed intrigued when I was telling him the cave story, but then began to tap on his book again. "We'll see you later," I said. "Okay." "What's your name?" "Peter." "See you, Peter." "Okay." I got in the truck resenting Rorschach and the cave office cat dispute. If she hadn't been there, maybe I could have sat with Peter forever. So that's from